Hello, everyone. Today I'll be looking into a tool called Barman, which is a backup and recovery tool that is kind of was developed by Second Quadrant. I think this was a really nice move because it's a really good tool, and I will just be doing a quick, really rush on this. It's not going to be like a full course kind of, but I will just take time to uh, just show some of the things, even though I will not really stay much on it because it's kind of a really lengthy information here, and I intend to kind of do a demo. So there will be a link to the actual full, documentation on the Second Quadrant website where you can follow that up and get some more information from there. But I will kind of go through almost more than 90% of what the tool does. And most of the information I'll be sharing here, note they are from the Second Quadrant website. So some of the documentation, I just kind of get some important screenshots that I will be just showing here. So if you want more information, you can get there. I think that's, yeah. So we'll be looking at this backup and recovery tool. It's really good. Does a whole lot of a whole lot of features. So let's go dive into that. So as I mentioned earlier, it's just a backup and recovery manager. So developed by Second Quadrant, and it's a really good tool. And you can really do backups, recovery, and do quite a lot with this tool. And we're going to see some of this on the slides. So if you look at this sample screenshot again taken from the Second Quadrant website, you will see that this tool, it's really good, and it gives offers this geographical redundancy. And if you look very carefully here, what you see is that this is the zone in US. Let's say this is a data center in US, and you have one in EU, and you have the let's say the Barman server, which is backing up this Postgres server here, and you have another Barman server in the EU, which is backing up this Postgres server here. But what you realize here is that there's some sort of syncing of these backups between these two Barman servers. So which shows that the backup taken in EU can be configured to sync over to US, and the backup taken in US can also sync over to EU. And this is so much good because you can kind of specify the different retention policy for these backups, and you have a different retention policy for the backups that are kind of done locally. So really cool. And I'm thinking that if we have some time, I might try to do demo on that too as well. So BART kind of does streaming backup, and also you can it offers both streaming backups and also does resync. And you will see that these two features are really different. When you're using resync, then you need to make sure that you have SSH enabled, and it will kind of stream those backups. And you can also specify resync in the WAR files too, as well, as we'll see later on. And it's kind of good because resync kind of also really you can also use that with incremental backup with Barman, and we're going to see that later. Streaming backup uses PG based backup, and you can really make use of this feature because with that it's possible through streaming to be able to also see a replication status of the different standbys that are configured for that server that Barman is actually connected to. There are a couple of different options that we're going to see. So standard archiving was streaming, but so you see that you can decide to do your standard archiving, your normal archiving that you've been doing with Postgres, or there is also the Barman wall archive that comes as part of the Barman command line interface package, which you can install on the standby nodes. So when you install on those standby nodes, it comes with this package. Basically, you have the Barman wall archive, and I think there's also the Barman wall restore, which you can use in the restore command on the standby nodes, as well as you can use the Barman wall archive in the archive command. And you can also be able to use PG receive wall as well. And this is good because it kind of gives you an RPO of 0. So it's really good feature though. So this is kind of a backup when you're using the streaming. As I mentioned earlier, streaming uses PG-based backup, as you can see here, and you can stream out the wall streaming using PG receive xlog, and all of these both all have certain parameters that you need to make sure that you set for for this to work. So basically, you just streaming the WAR files. That means that you need to have the binaries of PG-based backup on the Barman server to be able to execute and pull those backups. So here we see another architecture here where we're using the same streaming backups and PG receive xlog, and we're also making use of the bad CLI on bad CLI, where we actually using a Barman wall archive. This is set on the archive command. And when you said this, it's really good because you can you know make sure that you don't lose your archive war files, and you want to make sure that you always have them in case something goes wrong. So this is kind of a really good improvement feature, and they kind of recommend using this instead of using the old resync, where we put that inside the archive command. Definitely, you need to make sure that you have SSH connection. So you see this traditional architecture we have here, where we're doing backup via rsync SSH, and we're going to do that. We're going to see how we can configure both of them using rsync, using SSH too as well. Um, and we're going to use the archive command here. So this is just a basic configuration here, and we're going to work on that. We're going to see how that works. And this is another architecture here, where we see they're using, as we saw in the earlier screenshot, which I mentioned earlier, there was insert a wall streaming, and then streaming the backups, wall streaming, and they're using uh, um, Barman wall archive. But here it's kind of different now, where you're using the resync, and in this case, using the Barman wall archive together with the PG wall receive xlog. So it's it's kind of I can say Barman is kind of really, really flexible. When I look at some of the configurations that can be done as far as wall is concerned, I really like it. And these are some of the parameters that you can set on the configuration files when you're either doing streaming and when you're either doing SSH. So when you're doing streaming, you need to make sure that you have your streaming connect info, and you need to have your streaming archiver on, especially when you're doing your wall streaming with this, you know. And for SSH, basically, you need to always make sure you have an SSH command which is working, and you've actually tested that. Make sure it's working well. And you can decide to specify how many jobs you want. And really, this reuse backup link, this is where you can want to do incremental backups. This is mostly used for incremental backups, and we're going to see how that works. And we're going to see how much of data deduplication we can really benefit from. So we talk about wall streaming earlier on, where which really provide us almost zero RPO and using a PGX log, which is really good. And we're going to see that this uses replication slot, as we're going to see later on. And you can either call this PG receive X CD receive wall, and it will do that, or you can also specify it to create replication slot as well, which is kind of really good. And you need to make sure that you set the path prefix. The path prefix is kind of it's just specifies the location of what Postgres installation that you have, specifying the actual binary location for you, so that if you're executing wall streaming, streaming backup, which requires PG based backup, then you need those binaries for that installation. Oops, kind of skipped something. So I already mentioned about replication slot there, which is really good. Really to provide some good consistency when it comes to backups, when it comes to wall streaming, so that you won't really lose any WAR files. And there are kind of other benefits that we're going to see later on that Barman really provide, just to really crack down on the fact that it's easy to have RPO equals to zero, and even RTO equals to zero. Even though RTO we're going to be, it's not something we can really guarantee, because that you will need to use other replication tools, like maybe Rep Manager, or maybe um, you know EFM or other tools like that to obtain that. But this tool is really kind of good in what it offers here. So I already mentioned about wall archiving. Like you can use you can take advantage of this Barman wall archive, which is provided as part of the Barman CLI installation. If you're doing that on the on the standby servers as well. This is wall archiving using resync. As I mentioned earlier, this is one of the, it's been used early in the early stages, and it's still good though. Not really, it's still really good. And before you use resync, you will need to specify the incoming wall directory, and this is specified in the configuration file in the Barman host, Barman server. So you can always run this command, which will show you the incoming wall directory, and you will have to put this in your PostgreSQL.conf file, and you have to restart the server. So if sometimes you want to verify that your wall archiving is actually working, you can decide to do a PG switch wall. You force a PG switch wall with Barman. Barman is able to connect to the server and execute that. And and this is good because during the configuration of Barman, you have to create a user Barman if that's what you're using, which will connect to that server, and make sure that you've set up your PG pass file and all other files, and that will work fine. And then we're using streaming of backups. If you're using, as we mentioned, streaming backups requires PG-based backup, and which means you need to provide your path prefix, as I mentioned earlier on. And what defines that is going to be streaming backups is this command, which is a backup method equals to Postgres. We're going to see that we have, I think, three options for this, which we're going to see later on. And here also we see here that if you're using backup, as we saw earlier on, with wall streaming, you have to put Postgres. If you're doing a resync, then you have to mention rsync there, and you have to make sure you have your SSH on. And Barman provides some of these command line tools like PG check, which gives you an overview of all your configurations. And when you run that, you just want to make sure that everything shows okay, 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 okay. and all 3N. Sometimes you might have an issue there, maybe if the wall archiving is not properly set, or maybe the replication slots are not initialized, and if the backup fail, you will see some of those information there, and even the PG receive Xlog, if it's not properly set, you receive all those you see some of those errors there, and it's kind of really easy to just get that fixed. There are other commands too, and before that, there is a retention policy. And one thing with Barman is that it provides related retention policy, which you can set. And there is also the retention policy mode, which is just basically set to auto. And sometimes when you're using cron, it just automatically will have that enforce that retention policy, because basically it's scheduling that. So the diagnose command is really good because it creates some sort of a JSON report which shows you all the configurations that you have in your server, whatever parameters are set, and it kind of really gives you a good insight there. And you can even use that JSON for maybe other purposes if you really need be. List servers is there. You can list all the servers that are configured, that you've configured there, because Barman can actually take backups of multiple servers, so you can configure multiple servers and to take backups. And it's really good to have a Barman running on its own dedicated host so that it connects to any remote host and perform backups. So archive wall, so you can actually perform archive wall as a barman command. I think I mentioned that earlier on. So it's good sometimes you just want to it's to you just there's sometimes that so you run some backups. I've seen that where you run a backup and it says it's waiting for archive logs. You might want to archive the world, you might want to switch them, and that still works. So the normal backup command, you set up the backup for the server. You can run check, to check your server. It gives you a whole lot of information about your server there. PG, you have the get wall, which you can also use, to request any wall files through the get wall command. You can also pass that get wall command to the recovery options there. So there are really, really a whole lot of options there you can use. Even the restore command, as I mentioned earlier, you can use the barman get wall as well as you can also use the barman wall restore, right? So either use the barman get restore get wall, or you could use this as well with the PG restore. This is most commonly used, and I think we're going to use that. We're going to use this too as well to set on some remote servers that we have. Rebuild Xlog DB is kind of really good because it gives you, it kind of scans all the WAR files and generate metadata for the archive log. So sometimes you need to, even though there's another command too as well, which kind of works similar to this, which we'll see later on. But this is good because it really gives you information about your WAR files. It will tell you what metadata they are, or how many WAR files are there, and all of certain information, which is really good. So we've already talked about PG receive wall, which is kind of really good because, as we mentioned earlier, it gives you some sort of RP almost close to zero, and it makes you not to rely so much on our wall keep segments, because it might not be predictable. So using a PG receive wall, which goes with those replication slots, really make things uh, you know uh, makes you feel better about you having all your archive logs and not being afraid of not kind of being afraid, but at least it really gives some more security as far as that is concerned. Replication status. I think I mentioned this earlier on. Barman is really good because when you've configured Barman to your primary server, and if those primary servers have standby databases, you can actually use the replication status to see the status of those standby databases. With Barman. Just the fact that Barman is able to connect to the primary, it can also pull information about those standby databases, and it really shows you if they are in sync. You can actually see the start world, the end, the receive world lesson, and some of those really good informations, which are really, really helpful. Um, yeah. Show server is already there. You can also see server configuration parameters too as well. Switch war, you can define first. You can decide to switch war. Sometimes I do this when I do a backup and maybe it says still waiting for some war files. Sometimes I just run the Barman switch war, which just switches the war. And there's also a flag there where you can do a force. You can specify the hyphen force to force switch walls, and you know, kind of really have cool stuff. List files. List files is really good. I think it's also as part of like what I mentioned earlier about the other parameter which shows us the metadata of your WAR files. This list files almost does the same, but kind of goes a little bit more deeper, where you can just list the files. You can take a backup ID and you can see all the WAR files that belongs to that backup ID. You can see all the data files that belongs to that backup ID. It really gives you a whole lengthy information and very useful too as well. It shows you all the locations where all those files, WAR files, are saved on disks, which is kind of really good. Recover Bard, just like Barman, just like Bard too as well. You do recover, which is pretty simple and straightforward. You can just recover locally as well as you can perform remote recovery. And remote recovery too is good because when you run that and you specify your ID, it will, all you need to do is to make sure that you have SSH enabled, and Bard will be able to connect remotely and copy those backups, prepare everything. You can prepare recovery.com file and prepare restore command to for you. And all you do is just make sure everything works and you're able to start your server as well. It also does automatic remap, of table spaces using the recovery command. Really, really good too as well. Point in time recovery, as I mentioned earlier, you can use point in time recovery. And I see this really kind of cool because the features added here are really, really nice. We are also going to test how we can perform a point in time recovery using Barman. And here you can specify the target time, the target SID, LSN, target name, and you can also specify. It also comes with this other flag, which is very important, where you can specify the target immediate. If you want to recover and end with to just end when when the consistent state has been reached. You also have this target action here, which it can be shut down, pause, or promote depending on the state of your recovery, how it goes. It's really good because I remember in Postgres, you have to specify this. If you're doing a point in time recovery, you specify the recovery target action. And if you specify shutdown, when it reaches when the recovery has reached, it will shut down or pause. It will just get pause or promote. It will just promote. That means um, make the server to be read write. I think adding this here, it's really good and makes it more easy. Incremental backups, as I mentioned earlier on, this heavily relies on a resync because it kind of creates like a hard link, and that is why we we mentioned about the parameter reuse backup link. And when we see that, it just kind of reduces the disk space that is occupied. And what it does is that since it does this at the file level, what it have is that when you have those files on your disk, when it uses resync, if it discovers that those files were already there and they are not changed, it will not back them up. So it will just kind of just apply only the changes, and you can really see how much space you really save there, which is great too as well. This doesn't work for streaming. That means if you have your backup method set to Postgres, it doesn't really support that as of now. You can also do table space bandwidth as well, or you can do network compression and all the cool stuff that are there. Um, there are some limitations that we have backup from the standby. I actually did configure that backup from the standby using streaming, and which actually worked. At some point, I even had to go to the master to kind of switch walls there. But what they say here on the documentation that it is not currently possible to enable both wall archiving and streaming from the standby, which is true because the standby is just in recovery. So it's not possible at this time, but it looks like they have some documentations there, but for now it doesn't. But you can actually do that, and we're going to test that too as we're taking backup from the standby and see how that works. There are a couple of ways that you can actually force checkpoint, and I see this introduced in Barman to be very helpful because we have this with PG-based backup, where when we run PG-based backup, we can specify the hyphen capital X, and then we specify stream, which kind of has three options because you can say no, you can say stream, you can say fetch, which will fetch the WAR files. Uh, no, look, I'm talking about something else. No, it's actually the C options, which you can which you can be fast or spread. Sorry about that. I don't miss that up. So it's the C option when you're doing a PG based backup, which you can say fast, which will create the kind of a fast checkpoint, and we can say spread also. But here with Barman, it just gives you that opportunity to be able to use the immediate checkpoint, which will just force an immediate checkpoint or no immediate checkpoint, which is kind of really good. For archiving and compression and all of that, there are different utilities that you can compress with. Barman gives you a whole lot of more different utilities. Some of these, you just need to make sure that you have some of these utilities installed on the server if you have to use them. Synchronous wall streaming. Now, this is very, very good. As I mentioned earlier, Barman is so good. I really like some of the great features that it really have. Synchronous wall replication streaming. Now, sometimes we talk about streaming replication, we talk about synchronous and asynchronous. When you look at Bart here introducing this synchronous wall streaming, you see that they really have a whole lot of opportunities and a whole lot of different things you can choose from when it comes to wall streaming. So when you specify in the synchronous standby name, specify wall receive wall, and you just run your batch check, you will see that now it's actually doing a synchronous streaming. Now, from their documentation, as they mentioned here, don't it is not it doesn't just take the part of synchronous replication. So you need to kind of really understand what benefit it has for you and something you want to go with, and um, read the documentations accordingly to as well. So retention policy, we already mentioned earlier. It provides retention policy for your base backup. It provides a world retention policy for archive log retention, and it also provides retention policy mode, which is set to auto, as we saw earlier. So really multiple options there. Great. We could also do, we also mentioned at the path prefix already. If you're doing wall streaming where you have PG-based backup, you need to specify a path prefix pointing to the location of your um, point to the location of your binary location, pointing basically to your binary location. So integration, you have parallel jobs. You can specify how many jobs you want to do the backups. As well as you can also specify this in your backup location where you have Barman. You can specify in the Barman location, or you can override that by when taking the backup, specify the amount of jobs there. Geographical redundancy. I mentioned this, I think that was the first slide where we saw how you can kind of perform stream backups from one Barman server to another Barman server, which is really, really good. And you can do that back and forth. And I think we have time. We'll go through one of that too as well. It has different options where you can issue the barman sync info, which will kind of use the barman sync backup and other two as well, which is really good. And they basically call that the passive node, the node that you have, the node that has been configured for that, the passive node, the one which you're actually streaming from the master node. It's called passive. So as I mentioned earlier, you can use the barman sync info primary, which kind of calls the barman sync backup, the barman sync wall. And when you configure this, it's kind of good because whenever you take a backup on the master, it automatically just syncs that backup to another region, which is really makes it. And then you have a different retention policy for that, which is really good. We're talking about something like this where you have US region here and you have Europe region here. You have a Barman server here, which is backing up this Postgres server here. And then what you do is that on Europe, you have another different Barman server backing up this Postgres server here. You can configure this to be like the passive, either this to be the passive pulls from here, or this to be the passive pulls from here. And you see that whenever you take a backup from here, it will pull it, and this will also pull this one's backup. So it's each other pulling, or you can do it one way, not necessarily just using both ways like this. You can decide to say this is going to be the passive, and I'm going to pull backup from here, bring it up over here. Each time this barman Greg does backup, pulls it here. So anyone that works fine. We talked about the Barman client utilities. We'll talk about the Barman War Archive and the Barman War Restore. These all comes with this CLI, which you can use to install on your standby nodes as well and take advantage of them. So we're supposed to jump into the demo. Um, what I'm going to do here is um, so let's see. I think we'll just continue here. So this is the setup I have here. So I have a master server and two standbys. Then I have my Barman server where I'm going to install Barman. And this Barman is in USA. Then I have another master server in the EU. And I have another Barman server in EU. If time permits us, we'll see how we can do geo redundancy as well from US to EU, and we'll try to also do I'll take configure Barman and do some backups and look at other things too as well. So let's get started. Let me log into my master server here. So this is just a demo. It's a demo. So well, you know how demo always goes sometimes. um, Yeah, probably just everything will be fine. So right now, these are the servers we have here. These are my two standbys. All of them are in async and on this particular node here. Okay, so quickly I go over to my Barman server here, and that is where I will install Barman. So first, before you do that, is you can always have the repo from second quadrant, which is good. And here on this particular Barman server, I'm just going to go ahead and install the Barman, and I'm going to install the Barman's the bar CLI as well. But even though I won't use that, but yeah. Okay. I think this should pick up now. Run. Okay. So yes. So that is complete. So now the first thing I'm going to do here is I will also install the CLI, Barman CLI on the other nodes because I will need them to as well. So I'll just install only that. So I'll get that installed on the master server. So let me see here. And I need only the CLI, so I'm not installing this one. So I need only that CLI there. And I will run the same thing also for other nodes as well. So I just want the CLI. So you can have the CLI on other nodes. It's fine. So and on my last standby node, I will also get that installed there. But it's not like if you don't have it installed, it won't work. It will work. That is just for you to have, the Barman Wall Archive, the Barman Wall Restore we talked about earlier, which is good. You can set for your standby server. So when that is installed, let's go over to our Barman server here. Now, when you install it, you will have, let me go to /etc, and you will be able to see a file called barman conf. So we have this barman conf file here, which contains those configurations. And if we also go into cd into barman d, we're going to see these three sample files here. And these are just if you're doing the geo redundancy and you have another barman server which you have to set that at the passive node, then you can use this sample template here. And then for backup using SSH, you can use this sample template. And for wall streaming, you can use this sample template here. So we're going to see how we can use, I think, almost all of them and see how it goes. But before that, it's always good when you install Barman. What happens is that it installs a user called Barman. So if we check here, we're going to see that we have a user called Barman on this server here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to give password for that guy, just so that if I want to log in, I'm okay to do that. I'm just going to quickly open up another terminal here. So I'm going to just switch here as Barman, and I put my password. Okay, let me see where I am. Okay, so now what you want to do here is you want to make sure that you have SSH configured. That is what we're going to check right now. So my first server which I want to configure will be my master server, which is over here. And just checking the IP address for that master server. and I have my master server is running on 150. So I can just quickly generate SSS keygen, and I'm going to SSH it to that server. Oh, why is it say SSH generating is creating okay, yeah, that's fine. So I'm going to copy those keys over to the other side. I'm going to do SSH copy minus ID as I'm going to send it to the user there, which is the enterprise DB user at 192.168.91.150, which is our master server. Say yes, I want to send the keys over, put the password for the master server. And I'm going to do the same thing like over here. Let me just connect here as the enterprise DB user. Let me see which user am I here. Okay, I'm enterprise DB. Okay, let me do SSH copy. Oops. So this copy ID, and as I'm going to send it to Barman. Add, what's the Barman server? The Barman server is which server? Okay, Barman server is 153. Okay, let me send it to 153, 192.168.91.113. So I'm going to send it there. The password. Okay, so now I'm done with SSH keys. All right. So now that I'm good with SSH keys, um, what I'm going to do is you can decide. The next thing is I'm going to create a user over here on the master server. I'm going to call that user Barman. So let me log in there and I'm going to create a user, create user Barman. I'm just not going to give it super user, but it's not a must. There are quite a lot of different um, privileges that you can grant this user, which you can do. But in my case, I'm just going to oops, super user for now. And what next? Let me check my PG pass file to make sure I can include that user in here as well. And I'm just using kind of a default password, which is Postgres. I'm just keeping things simple at this point. Um, so I'm going to specify Barman, and I can save this file here. And what next? Okay, let me check my PGHBA config. Let me go to PG data. Oops, PG data. I think I'm on that location. Okay, let me VI my PGHBA config. I'm just going to add an entry for that user there, and keeping things simple here. I'm just going to allow bar user to, oops, I'm just going to allow the barman user to just be able to connect to any database. So right now, just want to keep things simple here. This is just test purpose. So I'm just allowing barman to connect to any server there. And I'm going to do the same thing for the replication here, which is going to be host. And I'm going to split replication. I'm going to put barman. And I'm going to leave everything simple there. But note if you're doing this on your actual maybe production environment, you need to make sure that you you specify things appropriately. Okay, now that I have Barman created there, what I'm going to do here is I will decide to over here. I can decide to create a PG pass file here for Barman, and I'm just going to put default. I'm just going to say all hosts and then 544 port 544 all databases and the user is Barman and the password is Postgres. Okay, and save that. And I know I will need to change this user's um, change a PG pass permissions to 600, and I think that should be good now. Okay, that looks okay. And when this is done, I will need to test to make sure that I can be able to connect to that server. All right. Let me test a connection here just to make sure that I can connect to that server. So I'm going to do ps equal, and I'm going to do select. I'm going to run a select version from my Postgres server. I just want to make sure that I can be able to establish a connection onto that server. And oops, the user I'm going to use is Barman, and the host of that server is 192.168.91.150, which is my host. I want to connect to the database EDB. Oops. Oh, okay, good. So connection to that server is good. So now I know that from my Barman server to my Postgres master server, everything looks okay. Um, Another command which I can also issue is the identity system, just to make sure that everything is working well. Can run ps equal minus u, and I put my sorry Barman, and then I put h, and I see use this same password here. I say connect over there, and identity. Oops. Identity system. Okay. And I'm gonna say I'm just checking for replication. Replication is fine there. What is going on? Wall sender for word replication cannot execute SQL in wall sender. Okay. Hmm. Okay. Identify. Let me see. Identify. Okay. Just a freaking error there, but they work fine. So that's fine. Okay, so the next thing we have to do here is to edit our Barman file, which I will need to edit the Barman conf file. I'll just leave things simple the way they are right now. So this is a Barman configuration file. This is any configuration you do here will be for the global section, basically. So we're going to do that for the server section, but this is just a global section. So we're just going to leave our barman home. The same thing, we're going to leave the barman user there, and the log file directory is going to be fine. Encryption, we're just going to leave that the way it is. And what else? Parallelism, I'm going to use two here. Just going to put two parallelism here. um, Checkpoint, immediate checkpoint. Remember we mentioned earlier that if you want to use immediate checkpoint, you can put in the global section, or you can you can you can do that during the time of you taking backups. But I'm just going to enable that here. Um, Timeout. I'm going to enable this one. Mm, What else? Retention. I'm gonna enable retention 4 weeks. Not really 4 weeks. Just a demo. I'm just gonna put 1 week. That is fine. Also, um, There might be other parameters that you might need to put, but we're just going to leave this for now. So next thing is we will need to define our server. So for this, we're starting with streaming. Streaming, we're setting up wall streaming. So for now, we are going to make a copy of this file here, and I'm going to put it as master. I'm just going to call it master for now. Um, I'm just going to pull it master USA. That's it, master USA. Okay, I'm just going to call it masterusa.conf, right? The master that is in USA. So when I do that, I will need to, to VI this file. And here I will need to specify my file here, which is master USA, and the description of that file, stream. You can decide to put any description you want. I can decide to say this is master USA server. I'm just gonna leave it like that, but you can, you know, do anything, anyone which works for you. That's fine. Database here. I'm just gonna put this to EDB, and I'm gonna change this to 192.168.91. And note that this is my um, my master server information to connect to the master server. Okay, what do I have here? Streaming. I need to specify my streaming here, which um, I did not map this these IPs to host. So if you map it, that's fine. Um, if you did map it, that's also fine. But I didn't map that, so that's why I'm just specifying the actual I'm just specifying the actual IPs. All right. Streaming user, I'm just going to use the same Barman, so nothing really much there. So backup method, remember, since we're doing wall streaming, we're going to leave it at, and this is already default because we're using the template for wall stream. So, and then we see here that we have a wall stream cover on a slot. So it's basically just going to create a slot called Barman. So when we run that, it will create a slot. And since we're using wall stream, we will need to specify, you know, um, the binary location because it will need to execute a PG base backup. So I can go ahead and note very well here that if you note very well, it went ahead and created streaming here, which is because I started doing the setup there. But now I need to see a master USA here after this setup. If I save this, I need to be able to see that. Okay, if I go here and I list, I should be able to see that there. Should be able to appear there. Um, okay. What else? So, okay, now we see it appears now. So when you set everything, you should be able to see it automatically create this location, right? And if you log in here, you will, oops, sorry. it will uh, so it has just streaming there. This fine. So now we have a server, and this is when you can say you have your server there now. And this is where Barman can recognize this server right now. All right. So if you run something like Barman, and it's always good to check, right? To check, to always check your configuration by running Barman check config. So we run this Barman check config. It's giving a couple of errors. It's telling us replication slot doesn't exist. We need to have that replication slot. Word receive is not running. So, which is true because we don't have it there. So, and this is where we will need to create that replication slot. All right. So here we need to run the creation of that replication slot where we will use the bad receive wall to do that. It's really simple, which it will also go ahead and start that too as well, right? Even if we don't create the replication slot, it will. So that's fine. So we're gonna run same command we saw earlier, which is barman receive, oops, receive wall, right? And then hyphen hyphen create slot, right? Create slot for master USA, and this should be able to connect over there and create a slot. So now we see that our slot is created, right? Now, if we jump over to the master server itself over here, we should be able to see that there is a replication slot. So if we log into the database and we do select star from PG replication, yeah, I think it should be replication slots. Replication slots. So we should be able to see that this replication slot is there, but it is not active, which it's supposed to be active. Okay, now it's come off active. So it's very important. You need to make sure that it's active. All right. And when it's active, then you're good to go. Very important. And remember the name of the slot, it was specified inside the parameter file, right? So now we can hop back over here and let's run by check master again. And we kind of see that some of things are clearing off, right? Some of the other stuff here is clearing off. So what it's telling us is there here is that wall archive, please make sure wall archive shipment is set up. All right. Okay, wall archive. Why is it not set up? Okay, let's find that out. Um, since we're using wall archiving, then that should be able to work. Let's see. Streaming con info. Uh, con info. Streaming backup. Streaming archiver. Streaming archiver is on. And what else? What else? What else? Um, do, 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 do. Let me see if I put archiver. Archiver, if I specify the archiver equals on here, um, I think everything should be fine here. Let's see if that should pick that up. Okay, let's run the check again and see. Okay, So that was the issue, right? You just specified archiver on, all right? And there it picks it up. So you need to make sure that your BART configuration looks as clean. It's like this. You should see everything okay, 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 okay. So when you see that, now you know that everything is it's fine. So if I cd to my master WAF location, so I will see that it now creates all these incoming stream walls and all this stuff, and you can see that it's even already bringing in walls in here from master server, right? And this is where my backups are going to be. Okay, so this is working fine now with that. We could see that everything is okay. So what we're going to do now is um, we can try to take backups. For example, what I can do is if I try to do Barman backup and I put my server here and I do backup. What you see here is doing backup via PG-based backup. And that is exactly what we explained earlier that um, when what we're doing here is doing wall stream. So it's actually doing wall stream. So it's using PG-based archiver to do that. And what you can see here is that waiting for WAR files. So it's actually waiting for some of the WAR files because we're doing WAR stream. Some of the WAR files are still need to come. So if we check, if we list the backups for this particular server, right? This is what we're going to see. Let me increase this page. So you could see here that it says it's waiting for WAR files. All right. So, and when it's waiting for WAR files, basically we're doing WAR stream. So basically those WAR files will come, you know. Uh, Apart from that, also, you could remember I mentioned earlier, sometimes you might want to force the, the, the archiver, you might want to, um, you know, do other stuff that still works very well. So, but um, it should be able to get this WAR files. Oops. So we see now that it's finally gotten. We just had to wait for a little while, and we see that it's finally got the WAR file. All right, so everything is looking clean here now. We have our first backup in here. And we could see that actually when it does that, we could see that it streamed the WAR files. The WAR files are there. Um, it's doing streaming, and the base, you could see that that's where you have, if you go to the base here, that is where you have, these are your backups in here, right, that it took. And if you list, you see that you have your backup info file, and this is kind of your data directory, and you go there, you will see that this is all the physical backup it took here. Okay, and let me just go back in here. You could see here that we have WAR files here too as well, so everything is looking fine there. So the next thing which I will just want us to look into, we've seen how we can configure Barman using wall streaming and um, um, wall streaming, which uses PG-based backup, and, streaming backups and wall streaming, basically. And we've seen those parameters we can set, and we've seen how it actually works. Now, we've connected to the master server, and one thing which I mentioned earlier about Barman here was that it's kind of interesting because you can be able to to check the replication status, because even though I've connected only to the master server, I can see the replication status of those standbys that are there. So if I run Barman, check for replication status, so my replication status, and then I put my name, my server name. Now, if you look keenly here, I just run Barman replication status, I put my server name. Now you're going to see that we have a standby. Barman automatically dictate that we have a standby, which is in async, and it gives us that standby server. And you could see here the wall LSN and everything there, and it gives us another second standby, which is running on this other host, and it tells us the user, that is the streaming user, is doing async and is doing async and all of that. Great information. And you could also see here that it also gives information about itself. Now, this is doing async because we're doing streaming, and what we're doing streaming, what we're doing from that Barman is doing is async. We can actually set this to be synchronous, and that is what we mentioned last time. I mentioned when I was explaining, I said if you get that over to using synchronous, it's a really nice feature, very good feature, which reduce that recovery point objective to zero. Just by collecting WAR files, like a synchronous server would do. So which is really nice. So let us do that. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna grab this guy here, and notice here is doing async Barman here. Now when I'm grab this file, I will go over to my standby server. I'll log in over to my standby server, and I can come out of this. Let me see where I am. Okay, let me open. Oops. PostgreSQL.conf. And under replication name here, I'm gonna remove this replication name which I had here. And oops, what did I copy? Okay, let me go back to my server here, and I'm gonna grab this, the Barman will receive wall. So you will put that in your synchronous names, and you save that. So when I save that, it's always good if you have to do this, you can restart your server, the Postgres server. I'm just gonna head to run a restart on that. I think it's restarted already. Make sure it's running back. And I just want to make sure that my replication slot is back up. You see, okay, replication slot is back up running. That's fine. And if I go back to my Barman server after changing that, and I run this same command again, and watch what I'm gonna see. Uh, now, look here. You see here that Barman is still showing us our normal async servers, right? These two async, but Barman has taken first position now because he's doing synchronous. And if you look at right now, everything is running synchronous in that Barman, just the change which we did. So this is also a really good feature, as I mentioned earlier, which really reduces the RPO to zero just by collecting the transaction WAR files, just like a synchronous standby will do. So just note that this is just an example configuration, right? So you must, you know, it's not like it replaces your synchronous, but it just does the same, which is really nice, really good. So before we go ahead, there were just some certain Barman commands that I want us to just kind of have a look into before we move ahead. We already saw the barman check, which is good when you need to check your server to make sure everything is good. You need to see all this okay here. And we've already seen the barman backup, which we which I which you know you can which you can use. And remember that even if you're running the barman backup, you can also specify the number of jobs that you want. You can specify -J and you say 4 jobs. It's going to override what you earlier had for that. So if I run this, it will override what I earlier had, and it will use, yeah, it will use that. So you can as well do that. This is really good sometimes when you're using sync, but yeah, that's fine. So you can always override that. And there's another command again, which we can see, which is I've already talked about list backups. And remember there was another command which we saw earlier, which is the rebuild xlog db, which will scan all the archived WAR files and generate the metadata for them. So if we run barman barman rebuild db, I think is xlogdb, and then my server name. So here we could see that it has a history of 1, it has backup label none, and it has WAR files of 4. It's just a metadata, nothing really much. We've also seen the bad receive wall, which we ran, and it also created for us the replication slot there, which was good. There is also the bad show server. Right now we have just one server. So if we run, if we had multiple servers here, we'll be able to see exactly all the servers that we have. Show server. Okay, this shows information about a particular server. It's really good information. If I do batch show server, I specify my server, it pulls out information about that server. And really interesting information. You can see that it's active. You can see the archive command. Now, this is my local archive command, which is set on the Postgres server, the remote server. Archive is on, and so much information here to which pulls remotely from that server. Last archive wall, it gives you that. Last backup max age, it gives you this is a replication slot which I set over there to 5, and you see it pulls out even information that you set in your postgresql.com file. So um, it really gives you very good information about your server that you have, which is cool. And remember we also talked about the bad switch wall command, which you can actually decide to switch to perform a switch wall. So in this case, let's do a bad switch wall, and let's put our server name, and I can specify. Let me see. This would the archive wall has been closed, so this has been closed already. So, but there are other flags where you can specify like hyphen force and hyphen archive, right? And which will still force an archive, try to process it, and you can see that um, running. So really cool commands there to take advantage and use. And if you go over to your server, you'll be able to see that this particular file here, which ends with 05, has been archived, right? If we look here, this if you go to your walls, I think it should be in the walls. Let me see to, you see here, this is the file that just came in, right? Um, you could see here, this one came in, this is the one got just finished, and this one came in. So it pulls out and it archives those files there. Really interesting. Okay, even though we have this, we could also try to kind of delete backups with Barman. And I think let's just kind of take another backup again. This time, now there's something else which I wanted us to. There's another flag. Remember, we talked about using the immediate checkpoint, which you can also use when taking backups. You could specify that too as well. So let's just go ahead and do another backup, and you could also specify something like hyphen hyphen immediate immediate checkpoint, right? Which will force an immediate checkpoint on that server and does backup. But if you don't want to, it's still you can still say no immediate checkpoint. See the backup is done. You can still specify and say I don't want an immediate checkpoint. So you can specify something like no immediate checkpoint, and it will perform that for you. So okay, so we've taken a couple of backups already on this server, and if we run the same list backups that we had earlier, uh, Barman list backup, specify our server. You could see here now that we have two that are waiting for WAR files, which is fine. Just give it a time. We kind of did backups within the same window, um, not 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 really much. So yeah. So there are. Let's just make sure that this okay. One is done. You see, have one more waiting for WAR file. You should receive that very soon. That should be done soon. The next command which I want to also see is doing a bad check backup. Now, let me see if this is done. Okay, that is still there. Uh, it's waiting for wall. So let's force the switch wall. You can do that too as well. So force switch wall. Okay, could force that. And then let's check this backup. Yeah, it should receive that soon. Yeah, we're going to check that very soon, but that should be fine. The next command is you can decide to perform a check backup, but when you have cron, it actually does that. Um, it not like it really it should return you something when you if I run um, oops barman check backup, and then I put my server name, and then I look for a backup ID that I wanted to check. Let's say I want this backup ID, and let's say check. So basically, if something, it will return. Everything should be okay, so it won't return anything right now. Yeah, so okay, so it got a Wi-Fi and everything is looking clean right now. So okay, the next thing is how you get delete backups now. As we saw earlier on the slide, you can delete those backups either you can, but before we delete those backups, there's also this command about the Barman list files, which we saw earlier on, which was just like getting the metadata, but it's kind of more detailed. And if we run Barman list files and we specify our target. So our target here can either depend on, it can be data, it can be standalone, it can be wall, it can be full. Data just means it just lists all the data files. If I specify the target here to be data, I specify my server and I can pick a backup ID. Let's say this backup ID. Now what it's going to do is that it's going to list all the data files, every information of this server for this backup ID. So if I press, it's going to be a whole lot of lists. So you see, it's going to be wide, it's going to be huge. So it lists everything from the logs to the data files, everything for that particular backup ID, and the locations is within where they are, everything. So if you had a big server, this is way huge, too much data. But it gives you much information about the archive status and everything, and you can really see everything is done here, showing archive status is working well, and which is good. A whole lot of information. Another target that you can decide to provide is a standalone, which I don't really see much difference. If I run this, it kind of almost shows almost the same thing, but say it just lists the backup, including the required WAR files. So see here. So I think what should be a little bit not too much should be for the wall. If I put a target to be wall, then it will just list me all the WAR files, which kind of recent WAR files for that particular backup, which is kind of good because if you have a backup, you want to see all the related WAR files for that backup. Really, really interesting command here, which you can use to really see that um, those ones. So now what I want us to look into is we've seen how we can back up, we've seen the different backup commands, we'll see how we can use them. We've actually configured the wall backup, and we've seen a couple of things already. So what I want us to look at right now is I want us to see how we can recover. Um, um, let's do a local recovery, and we'll look at remote recovery, how we can use Barman to recover remotely. All right, let's jump into that. Okay, so what I'm going to do for this demo is I'm just going to create a sample directory here, and then I'm going to call it um, let me just say let's say I want to do a recovery for dev, right? So I'm just going to use it like um, this is just going to be like a server on its own. I'm going to start it up. All right. Now, to do recovery, we you need to decide which backup ID to use. Right. I'm just going to pick any backup ID. So let me just do list backup master, and I can see the backups that I have there. So to recover, what I can do here is I will run the Barman Recover, and I will specify my server name, and I will specify the backup ID. So I'm gonna pick one of these backup IDs here, and the next thing is I will put a path. Where do I want to recover to? So I know where the path is. So the path is actually here, and it's called def. So I think that should be fine. I know this is backup recovery, and this is just local recovery. So I press enter. So BAD is recovering. Now it's going to pick up all the WAR files and those files for that backup, and it's going to recover it. And now you can see here it says that the Postgres server has successfully prepared the server for recovery. All right. So let's see what actually it prepared in there. So let's jump into that location, which is dev, and let's see what happens there. So we see it recovered everything here for us. And what do we need to do here? Basically, not really much. But since we're running on the same server, I want us to change the port for this. And I want us to change the port here. Let's put the port to, since we're on the same server, let's put it 5447 and let's save that. Um, what else do we need here? Let me vi the postgresql.auto.conf file. See, okay, there's nothing in there. Um, Nothing particular there. Let's try to start up this server and see what it tells us. If there's anything that we need to do there. So let me do pgctl ctl start -d, and I'm gonna put path here, and I'm gonna start path -w to see the output. Command not found. So let me call this from the binary location USR EDB AS12 bin. Okay, let me start that up. So server started. Oh, yeah. So now I have my server started. Let me see. I can connect to my server. PSQL 5447. Says database Barman does not exist. Okay, let me connect to another database. EDB. Okay. So you see here, I was able to recover, but this was local recovery. So I'm able to connect to my database and it's working just fine. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to stop this server because I don't really need it right now. So I'm going to shut it down and I'm going to destroy it. So I'm going to destroy it because I don't need it right now. So, okay. So that should be good. Okay, now the next thing is let's look on remote recovery. How can we recover remotely? Now we're going to choose a remote server. And in this case now, let's just go ahead and use the same master server, and also but it's going to be remote anyway. And we're going to recover there. So we're going to have a different location there, recover there, right? So in this case here, let's log into the remote server there, and we will attempt to perform recovery on the remote server. Okay. All right. Now this is my remote server here, and I know that I already have SSH for that SSH configured over there, and everything is fine there. You know, for simplicity here, since Bart is going to be doing the recovery, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add that user Bart over here on this server so that um, I don't have any issues. But you might just create a location and you give permission for everyone to do that, which still works fine. So I just wanna create that location here, and I log in here, and I will kind of generate SSH key gen RSA for this user here, and I'm gonna SSH that key over to the BAT server where the same to the Barman 112.168.91.153. Okay, so yes, I want to send this SSH key to this user. Okay, I've added it here. So on my BAT server, let me also do the same thing. I'm gonna do SSH copy minus ID minus I. I'm gonna send it to Barman on that server 192.168.1.150. Okay, I'm gonna put the password. Okay, now I think I should be good. Um, so right now I have BART running here slash home. Let me come over to my BART server, and for me to do a remote for me to do a remote recovery of that server, since I have, and that's one of the main things you need to note there is that you have um, you have SSH enabled, which is very important, and you will, you know, you have your backup ID. What backup ID do I want to use to recover there? So let's just check if we can have a backup ID here. List backups. We're going to pick one backup ID here. So in order to recover remotely, we're still going to do a barman, and then we're still going to do recover. But in this case now, we have to specify a remote SSH command. And this is because since we're doing a remote, so we're going to specify the command which is going to BART is going to use to SSH. So we call it the remote SSH command. And in this case, it's going to be SSH barman, and it's going to which server? We're sending it over to our master server, which is running on 150.91.150. Yeah, so I think that should be our that SSH command. And remember, we talk about get war. So we want to recover, and since it's remote, we want to tell Batman to get the required war file for that. So we're going to specify get war, and after specify that, we're going to specify our server, which is a master D, which is name of our server, and we need a backup ID for that server. We're just going to choose anyone here randomly, and after we specify that, the next thing is we need to just make this a little bit, if these commands all can get in here. But the next thing is we need to specify a location. Now I'm just going to hop over here. I'm going to pick the BART home location, and I'm going to put it here. Just going to put barman slash def. Now I put def here, but I don't have this location def on my remote machine. So barman is going to create that. So when you run that, barman will automatically create that location and do the restore there. So let's just verify to make sure our command looks great. Everything looks okay. And okay, now let's fire that up. So BART is checking the remote command, is doing the copying of the base backup to that remote location, and is picking from that server which we've mentioned, and it's picking that backup ID and all the required files that are there for that server. Everything works fine. It should say it's successfully recovered. Now let's hop over to our server over there, and if we list this location, we should see that it created a location there. So let's jump in here, and let's look at what is going on here. There are a couple of things going on here, and that we could see that it created a recovery the signal. All right, created a recovered signal. With this recovered signal, let's find out. Let's see. Let's see in the auto. Now, you see here what bad did is because we wanted to get wall, it created a restore command. And this restore command is pointing to a bad server, right? To a bad server, which is running here. So what we're going to do is I'm going to edit this restore command because I did not map this. It will not recognize this host name. So I'm going to put the actual IP address of the bad server, which is 9.192.153. And I'm telling you that, okay, remember we talked about when you install bad CLI, it comes with this bad wall restore and bad wall archive. Bad wall archive is used for the archive command, and restore command uses the bad wall restore. So this is a sample here. You see how Barman itself it's making use of this. And it's telling it that it's going to do a wall restore, it's specifying the user, the server, and the server name, and moving everything across. So the safeties. And the next thing we're going to do is I will want to edit, since I already have a server running here, I will want to change the port over there, and I'm going to change the port, and I'm going to specify the port this time here to be 5448, since I already have a server running here. Now, remember that this server is coming up in recovery, and that is why it's a recovery signal file here, right? Okay, let's attempt to start up this server and see what happens. We think everything should be fine from here. Start -D, sorry, and we have, and we put -W. Oops. Yeah, I didn't export the binaries here, so each time I need to call it from there, but that's fine. Okay, and then I start it up. So it's pulling the WAR files, and when it does pulling the WAR files, it's going to tell you if everything works fine, it should say it's done pulling out those WAR files. So right now, um, what we see there is server is started, which is good news. Let's try to connect our server. So we connect to our server on 5448, and this time we are going to use ETB. So you see, so we're back in our server. So this is a remote restore that we just did, restoring remotely, right? And you see how Bart did that. It's really very, really interesting to see that information there. Okay, the next thing which I want us to look at here is we'll talk about restore. um, I think it's just better to look at the point in time recovery, right? Since we've talked about local restore, we've talked about remote restore, let's also look about point in time recovery. How does Barman deal with point in time recovery? So in this sense, let's go ahead and destroy the server. I'm just going to stop it because I don't need it right now. And I'm going to destroy that server. Sorry, server, but you're going down. Okay. All right. Now, the server has been destroyed. So what I'm going to attempt now is also um, a remote PITR, a remote point in time recovery. So I'm going to attempt a remote point in time recovery. Now, how do I want to do this point in time recovery? We're going to add on, let me just do it this way, right? Let me just go back to the master. I'm going to connect to the server and create some tables, and then I'm going to, let me just create some table. This is point in time recovery. I just want to simulate it to see how Barman is going to respond to bringing this, doing a restore to a particular point in time. All right. Just want to see how, oops, sorry. What's that? Okay. So I'm just going to create a table. I'm going to create table uh, Barman test. Select star from PG. I'm just gonna take PG description. Oops. PG description. Oh, did I miss something? Okay. I'm just gonna create two of them. Test one and to test one there. Let me just add a third one. Test two. Now that I have this, let me look at the time that I have now here. Right. Okay, this is the time I have here right now. All right. So this is the time I have here now. Now, how can we simulate this? Let me see. Um, let me just create another table here and uh, okay, let's do it this way. Let's say I come over to the bat server here. I've created that, right? And let's say I do I do I do a backup. All right. Where are you? Okay, let me just do a backup. We shouldn't take long. Okay. That should finish soon. Okay. Finalizing backup. That should be done soon. Okay. Okay. Let's see. Let's do bat list backups. Master. And we could see that recent backup that just took place right now is this one. That's a recent backup. Take for example, if we come over here again, and let's say I create some more tables. Right? And this time, and I'm gonna say non-bad, non-barman. I just wanna make sure I correct no barman. Okay, no barman, no barman one. I don't want to see these tables when I do the store. Okay, let me see. And I'm gonna do no barman 3. All right. Let me look at the time here. Okay, I have a couple of scenarios here, and I really want to see how we can break this down. Okay, take for example that within these times, let's say um, something happened, and we took another backup again. We created some tables. We took a backup. We created another table again. We created another table again, and we took another backup. Right. So what I want to see here is I want to restore to the first time that I had where I'll restore using the first backup ID. All right, I'll restore using the first backup ID, but I expect that, but I'll restore using the first backup ID, but I will use a second time, which means that I'm expecting BAR to restore the first backup and then apply the required WAR files, right, to recover that server, basically. And then the second one is I'm gonna now restore to the second backup, but using the first time. Okay, I think that should work. It's kind of confusing, but we'll get there. Let's see. So this is my second um, backup ID. So this is the second one I just did right now. So this is the one I did when I took when I created this. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to attempt to restore to this time where I expect all these tables to be there. But what I'm going to do is that even though I'm restoring to this time where I expect to see all these tables, I'm going to use the backup ID that I did for this backup, which means that BAT is going to restore the backup ID, the backups for where these tables are, and I want to see how BAT will now apply the WAR files to recover this guy. I want to test that. I don't know that makes sense. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to restore to this other wall ID, but BAT will do the restore up to the recent, right? And then I'm going to do another one again. Okay. Okay. So now, in order to restore, what we're going to do is, I think just going to call up the same command we did last time for our restore. We're just going to modify some stuff here. The first thing I'm going to modify is I'm going to pick up this backup ID, which is the second backup ID. And I'm going to replace this backup ID with that backup. And the next thing which I'm going to do is to specify the target time. Remember we had, you can remember our target time. We're going to leave that server as it is, and we will specify a target time. Okay, let me see. Okay, I'm gonna put hyphen target time, and I'm gonna put the time of that server. Let me go over here, and I'm gonna pick up this time. I'm just gonna use this time up here, and I come back, and I'm gonna specify that time here. Okay, I think this looks better if I'm not forgetting anything. Right. So basically, we wanted to get worse, yes, and wanted to use this target time here and let it restore to the same remote host. We will create this location because remember we deleted this location already, which does not exist. We wiped that location out, right? We wipe that location out, does not exist. So BAT is going to recreate that and do a restore. So if that is fine, let's fire it on and see what happens. Okay, so you see here it says doing point in time recovery and is using the target time, okay, which we specified, right? So let's see, it's going to copy up all those um, um, files there, and we'll see what happens. Okay, I think it should be done. It will definitely just prepare the same WAR files as we saw earlier, and it will attempt to do prepare the same WAR files, and then we'll have to go, get the server ready and work on everything. Okay, that should be done very soon. Okay. Mm, that should be done very soon. Okay, this is done. That's fine. And then the next thing here, which we want to do here is move over to server. We're going to see that it did everything there. We go into that location, we list that. You see it has a recovery conf file. Yes, that is fine. Let's open up our PostgreSQL.auto.conf, and as the same thing you see now. In this case, bad put 2. It had a recovery target time, and it also included a restore command for that, which is great. So right now we're just gonna I'm just gonna modify this, but in your own case, you might not need to do that if you just map those host names, but I didn't do that. Okay, and here I'm just gonna change the port. Just going to be, I'm just gonna put it at 7 this time around. Okay, and what else? I think that should be fine. I can just go ahead and start up this server right now. I think that should be fine. Start it up. Okay, I was trying to stop it. Let me start it. So it should say something is not right here, guys. So what are you saying? Let's see. Let's see what is going on. Uh, they're saying that we should. Oh, if you're restoring, touch this file, recovery conf. Yes. No, be careful. If you will result in corrupt file. No, we're not going to remove the label. We'll leave it there. Let me go back one step and let me see. Recovery conf. Recovery. We have a recovery signal there already. And add require recovery options. And add the required recovery options. Invalid checkpoint. Restoring. Let's see. Let's see that file again. Oh, 1 minute. Oh no. Oh, oh. This was supposed to be okay. This is supposed to be a server. It's supposed to be where the BAT server is running. I instead put the master server. I think that should be it. So a BAT server is running on 153. So yeah. So let me save that. So it was trying to get the WAR files, but it couldn't do that. So let's everything should be fine. Let's start it up again. I think it should be working now. It's recovering. And boom. All right. Good. Perfect. All right. Right now, let's go ahead and log in into the cluster. So I think I specified 7 this time around. 47. So I log in and let me check the tables that are there. And you can see that BAR did recovered all. It applied those WAR files, which is great. Now, let's try something else again. For example, let's say, let's stop the server, right? Stop the server and let's stop the server and let's stop the server and let's delete this location. All right. So this time around, I really want us to do another recovery again. And this time we're going to specify the second ID, but we're going to tell it that even though the second ID has the full backups, but we want it to recover without recovering this, right? We want to recover here without this files. So this time around, we want to recover up to this point without recovering these other files. But we'll use the last backup, which means that even though the last backup contains all of this, but it's going to push back to here. Okay, in that sense now, let's do that. Let's change the time. Just copy. Uh, oh, sorry. It's kind of. And then let's take this backup ID here and let's put it here. Let's re-enter. So requested target timeline is before. It's before. Oh, oh, wow. Oh, yeah. It's before. It's requested target timeline. It's before. Yeah. Yep. Okay. Oh, timeline. Blah 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 blah. Is before the backup end time. So it's before the backup end time. Okay. Yeah, so we could still use um we could we could still use let me list backup. So oh what did we specify? 5. We could still use yeah, this last one, which will still work. Or we could still use the same one, but kind of get rid of the other one and apply the locks. So yeah, which will still work. Which will still work. So basically, this is just a demo, and that is just what I wanted to show based on the point in time restore. You can restore any how you want to. So you can just those are just um, example of how we can perform a point in time recovery. I really want to get the video not too long, that it can be boring, but yeah, we've done restore and there's one thing I wanted to do, but it looks like I will have to do it on a separate video where I will show how just a continuation of this, where I will show how we can do um, geo redundancy and other stuff. Um, Actually, we've kind of covered a lot already. There's something we have not done, which is performing backup using 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 our sync. I don't think we've done that. I don't think we've done that. So I don't know. We could just. Um, I think I will. The next video, I'm going to just include. The next video, I'm going to include performing backup using rsync and also doing geo. Yeah, I think I'll join those two, geo redundancy, right? So kind of cover up a lot of things already here, not to make the video too long. So next video, I'm going to put um, the two of them and any other thing which want to add in there so that it's kind of a little short. All right. So I hope you all uh, enjoyed it and let me know if you have any question. Thank you.